is that darn karate Jew. They're making us rabbinists look horrible. Shalom, and welcome to another exciting edition of the Torah Watchman Show, LLC, hosted by none other than your humble host here, the karate Jew in minority in Maryland, the United States of America, Reb ben-Emmett. May all of you be so blessed for coming to my video once again. Thank you for new subscribers. Thank you for those people sharing the love and wealth and love and truth of everyone out there through the Holy Torah. That's only, just like there is just one Torah, there's only one true God. May we all say Amen. The title of this Torah Watchman Show edition is Parshah Lech-Lecha. What does that mean? It means go forth. And it's found in Bereshit chapter 12, verse 1. Yes, the first set of Hebrew words begins the title of this Torah Sidra. Again, I hope everyone's been well. As a brief general overview, we're going to be covering Bereshit chapter 12, verse 1 to chapter 17, verse 27. And a general overview where we left off last week, with the Tower of Babel, the city of Nimrod per se. I would say it's probably an ancient Mesopotamia, the same land where the two major heroes of the day, Abram and Sarai, will be called by the King of the universe to leave their family fortune behind in an incredible, miraculous way. That voice visiting them in the night visions, calling them from a land of riches, in which their names could be remembered forever as names of huge cities, like Abram's forefathers. But this is a tale of an incredible individual, Abraham, which was the greatest of all Noahides of his time. He began the Noahide movement 4,000 years ago. Isn't it incredible? Of course, we're going to be talking about the different tribal factions within the land of Canaan, which would be future Israel, the Eretz Israel. It is actually, if you like the movie of Game of Thrones, it was a Game of Thrones. Also, God was cursing the land because of the evil immorality there, the way they treated one another, the heathen worship practices there, the pagan system there, polytheistic tribal people. It was a famine in that great land. And that drove Abraham all the way to Egypt. But what I would point out here, nothing that happened in Abraham's life was by his doing alone. Of course, he had his free will choice, right? But God was leading him, and he listened. He had enough common sense to say, these stone statues in my father's shop, what I'm selling, there's nothing there. There's nothing there. These people bow to these statues. They talk to them. They ask for all kinds of tokens of good luck. They ask people to be cursed. The enemies are cursed. But they're dumb, deaf, cold statues. This God that speaks to me every night is the one true God. Why did Elohim speak to Abraham? And why didn't Elohim speak to anyone else in his clan? He could have spoken to his uncles, his cousins, or whatever, far lost relations, and the land of Chaldea, where he was from, his home. But he was the only one that listened. We have dreams too, folks. We have visions. In fact, the prophets, like prophet of Joel, promised in the days of the end of times, the day of the Mashiach, old men will dream dreams, and young men will prophesy. And this is what's happening here to Abraham. He was self-aware of something much greater than the legends or traditions and myths that was passed down from his father and his father's father. So let's get started, right? In the first aliyah, the divine creator commanded Abram, and his name was named Abram at that time, to leave his father's house and homeland, like I just stated before. Travel to a faraway land. Now, they had trade routes between Chaldea or Mesopotamia, interchangeably, as what those lands were called before Assyrian kingdom empire was set up during that time. We're talking about northern Iraq, essentially, along the river Euphrates, river Tigris. And this was like the breadbasket of the Middle East during that time. So, Abraham had huge caravan. He actually had soldiers. He had support personnel. He had indentured servants. That was just the layout of the land during that time. When foreign nations conquered other nations, if people wanted to survive those conflicts, they sold themselves into slavery because they lost everything. Winners take the spoils, right? Well, Abraham had a large caravan, a nomadic person riding camels. You can picture this, like Lawrence of Arabia. And him and his whole family and caravan left his family fortune behind. There's many stories in the Talmud. It's not really worth your time for me to tell it, but essentially what Abraham left with, he actually married his niece, Sarai, and she was infertile from day one. He knew that. When you're marrying someone, a man, you expect a dowry or something coming from your wife, and she couldn't even give him guarantees that he would ever have a son or have a daughter or any kind of children. But the gracious man of Abraham, he rescued his niece, his younger, much younger, he's probably about 11 years younger, about the same distance of years between my wife and me, interestingly, right? And as a blessed honor of supposedly of her father, his brother, I believe Haran, that died in an accident, supposedly. Okay. Also, interestingly, Lot, his nephew, was joining them. Was Lot Sarai's brother, or was he a first cousin? I'm not sure about that. Okay. But anyway, that is the three people actually traveled at that time, as I would say, as royalty, kingly people, Abraham, Sarai, and Lot. Okay. So the part of the night vision that Elohim espoused to his servant Abraham, his friend, was that he would make him a great nation if he obeyed God's word. You think there's blessing just around the corner, but how many people are brave enough to go with that gut instinct when everyone else is telling you you're stupid and crazy for what you're doing, but you feel in your heart it's just right? And then it torments you every night knowing that if God gives you an unrestless spirit when he wants you to do something very important for your life because he loves us so much, right? God does not want to take us down a path of a fiery furnace. He doesn't want us to be destroyed. He wants us to be restored. We're full of shalima. God loves his servants. He loves his people. He loves his creation. We're all divine and sweet in his eyes. When you say, oh, man. So Abraham did obey. And I wonder if Elohim called anyone in the past that did not obey, like Haran or someone like that. I don't know. The story's not there, the detail is there. I'm not going to create a soap opera episode for you. But anyway, Abraham obeyed. He encourages his beloved new wife, I guess his bride, Sarai, and she was incredibly beautiful, I guess. She, maybe sometimes men fall in love with a woman despite their better judgment just because she's gorgeous and beautiful. That's just how men are. But God knew how to rapture his heart away through Sarai. He also promised that Abraham would become a great nation if he obeyed him and left his father's riches where we hold in our hands something tangible for him to let go of that, to hold something that was intangible, which is a future promise made by an unknown God, a God unknown to his forefathers or forgotten, that was with Abraham in a new and powerful way. This is an incredible story every time I read it. So finishing up the first aliyah, once Abraham arrived in Canaan, God informed him that he would eventually give the entire land to his descendants. Now, there's a lot of problems in the Middle East today simply because Muslims do not obey the word of God, and I'm brave enough to say that because in the original Quran, not all the thousands of commentaries that they read about the Quran says very clearly the land of Israel is to belong to the Jews at least to the end of days. Okay, that's what it says. The word Palestine is not in the Quran. The word Jerusalem is not in the Quran. In fact, Moshe, the great prophet Moshe, incidentally, I don't want to go down rabbit hole, it's mentioned, I would say, hundreds of times more than Muhammad. Both my brothers, my Arab brothers, and I like to call them my Arab brothers, I would like to have some sort of friendship with them one day. I hope so. We both share Semitic origins through Abraham, our great forefather. You hear about forefathers in America that we revere. Well, the Jews revere Abraham as the greatest of all patriarchs, as the greatest initial prophets, the individual that God created the great nations of Israel and the Arab nations. Later on, we get into that as the story continues. So Abraham traverses the length of the land until famine forces him to travel Egypt. Now, what that essentially means, traverses the land, Abraham, like many people from his origins, raised cattle and sheep, herds of sheep and goat and things like that. Well, you know, sheep need grassy fields, right? And they need a lot of water. So what happened is that when the grass is literally mowed down because sheep ate all the food, all the vegetation, or is dry, then Abraham would direct his people to lead his herds to a more fertile land and with more watered fields. And this is what it means. He transversed quite far through Canaan, staking out the land, seeing what was there, probably comparing how the land was different than where he grew up in the land of Chaldea. Okay? So Abraham decided, he told his people, he said, you know, Egypt is well known to be preventative and proactive and saving grain and corn and grain silos and things of that nature to store it up for times like this in famine. There's just no food here, and there's nothing for my cattle and sheep to be fed. Now, it does not indicate, I don't think it says in the Torah that he had sheep versus cattle. I've just drawn this in, that he did have flocks and herds because during that time, nomadic people, that's what they bartered and traded with when they didn't have money, and gold and silver and things like this, and currency. So he was in a foreign land. He's never been there. I imagine he was a little bit nervous. I'm sure his wife and his nephew Lot was nervous. His younger nephew Lot was nervous. I'm not sure what his age was. He was probably a very young man, maybe an older teenager. I'm not sure. He was unmarried at that time. So what Abraham was afraid of, he told Sarai, this is almost comical, and it's almost unbelievable too, and that's why I believe it to be true. He essentially told Sarai, he said, you know, if I take you with me, and you know you're knocked down gorgeous, right? You got a figure that just speaks for itself, right? You know, God brought the mode when he made you, Sarai, you know. It said, please, if people ask when we go into Egypt, just tell them that you're my sister, okay? And then, because they'll kill me. And God has a plan for my life. I don't want to do anything stupid and die so easily at the hands of the Pharaoh or the Egyptian armies there. So this was his story. So Abraham took Sarai and Lot, and he told everyone that he was her older brother. And the second aliyah, and indeed because of her beauty, and the Torah goes on and on about this, Sarai was taken captive and brought to the Pharaoh immediately. Evidently, you know, with all the people and traders that come in and out of Egypt all the time, something caught the Pharaoh's eye, and probably not the Pharaoh himself, but probably a servant. Maybe he lost his wife. Maybe he wanted another woman for his as a concubine or something. I don't know. But anyway, they notice her, and sure enough, just as Abraham feared, Pharaoh reached out and took Sarai for himself. Okay? But what happened, as soon as he took Sarai into his household, he was struck by a horrible plague. The Pharaoh and the Egyptians were struck by a plague. Of course, the Pharaoh was a very polytheistic person. He thought of himself as a demigod and very superstitious as well. So if a plague occurred just after he took this stranger into his household, this Sarai, this woman, he feared that some god was cursing him. Okay? So he immediately approached Abraham and said, "What's happening? What's happening?" And the Pharaoh hastily released Sarai back to Abraham's custody. And of course, the Pharaoh offered him kingly gifts and just filled his caravan with grain and food, took care of his animals and everything else. And Abraham returned triumphantly to Canaan with all the rations he needed to take care of his family. You know, through stupid mistakes like this, deceit, and you know how humans are, God is in control, right? God is in control because God does not focus on the perfection of our actions and deeds. He focuses on the sincerity of our heart. And Abraham had a very sincere heart, and he was doing traditionally something probably we learned from his father or his grandfather. Who knows? Okay. So in the third aliyah, Lot, who accompanied Abraham and Sarai, was independently wealthy. So he had money coming from a different clan, a different coffer of gold and things of that, and a treasure and things like that. Like I said, all these individuals, both Lot and Abram, came from very rich and wealthy generational families. So when Lot's shepherds, and not just Lot, he had hired shepherds watching his sheep, and this time it says very clearly they were raising sheep. There was a quarrel, an argument with Abraham's shepherd. This happens in Israel, unfortunately, between Arab shepherders and Jewish shepherders all the time, and it gets violent, unfortunately. This happens, okay? So what Lot willed and dealt with Abraham, I'll tell you what, we're going to be arguing like this. There's no fences here. We're getting our sheep mixed up. I don't want anything to be between us, Uncle. So I tell you what, I heard about the fertile plains down among the 5 cities there, which was the Dead Sea today, Sodom and Gomorrah. So he said, I'm going to Vegas, and I'm going to make a lot of money there, and I'll be able to take care of myself. And I think at that time he probably was married to one of his maidservants, okay? Because eventually he had 2 daughters. Okay, so, Abram said, Shalom Aleichem, may peace be unto you, okay? So Lot departed. God spoke to Abraham again, reiterating his promise to bequeath the land to his descendants, and promising to make his descendants numerous as the soil of the earth. Let's put a period there real quick. You see this over and over again. Abraham, Lot, and Sarai were in the land of Canaan, a.k.a. Palestine, a.k.a. Israel today, right? And what did God say? I will give you the entire heritage of the land that's currently occupied by Canaanites. And you're a foreigner, but I'm going to give you the land to rule over them and occupy their land in the future. Now, the least can be said is that if an Arab has a quarry with a Jew over a particular piece of real estate in Israel, it should be shared equally, right? But with the premise that they're worshiping the one true God. Now, our God, Elohim, is known by 13 attributes. I'm not going to go through all of them, but in 13 attributes of Elohim, or Jehovah, like I like to say, and I fall on my face every morning and worship Jehovah God. The 13 attributes or 12 attributes of Allah are radically different. In fact, the prophet's message to Muhammad is radically different too versus Moshe. So almost like, even though my Muslim brothers worship one God, one true God, and no other God, they're strict monotheistic people. In fact, sometimes rabbis allow Muslims to come in their synagogues, in the past at least, to pray. Because of that reason, they're true monotheistic people. However, the behavior as described by Allah is a lot different than the behavior that we have ascribed from our King of Kings, our Lord of Lords, Jehovah. And I just want to say here, so that people, if they want to coexist together, they have to be at peace. They literally have to be like brothers. They have to be like brothers and sisters, like one big family. But that's not what's happening in Israel. And it's never about land, folks, between the Palestinians and Jews. I'm sorry I have to say this. It's not about land, or that Palestinians want more land than the Jews want. It's about eradication of Jewish people. This was never, ever the plan foretold by Elohim to Abraham and his descendants, that they should war against each other continually and try to kill one another. Okay? I just wanted to get that out. So we have Lot. He's departed from Abraham's tribe. He went to Sodom. God reiterated the promise he made before when Abraham and Sarai and Lot were in the land of the Chaldeans, and keeping his word. And how is God communicating with Abraham? I heard some karate Jews and other Jews asking this question, very interesting. The English translation is very misleading, so don't go there. Just look at the Hebrew there. That's very clear that God was speaking to Abraham in a night vision, okay? That's how every single prophet other than Moshe received information from God. As God spoke to Moshe face to face, but through Abraham and other prophets, it was through night visions, or maybe trances or things of this nature. It was not something at a pure conscious state like me talking to you. Okay? And the fourth aliyah, there was a major war that was setting into motion in Canaan during the time shortly after Lot's departure from Abraham's herds to Sodom. And there were many nation states there, many nation tribes, and they were warring against one another. Why? Because the Game of Thrones again, always wanting someone else's territory, wanting their treasure, wanting their water rights, whatever it may be, wanting the walled cities or the location or whatever. So this was happening. And of course, with famine, there was limited real estate there for herds and livestock, okay? People can go to war literally over a water well. They really can, okay? So when the dust settled, the victorious king took captive all the inhabitants of Sodom region. There were 5 cities around there, Sodom and Gomorrah, and 3 other cities that's not named right now, not important, but I'm saying that they took over, I guess, the mayors or governors of cities, maybe killed them or imprisoned them, and took over the people probably as slaves or servants, okay? So what happened is that Lot was taken captive as well. And at this time, when Lot went to Sodom, he was married and he had 2 daughters, and he was probably looking for husbands for his daughters too. But he didn't get to that point because his home and everything was ramshacked. He lost his fortune and everything. I think about the prodigal son. Well, I want my fortune now, whatever. But that's happened. And Abraham heard what happened with his nephew. What does Abraham do? And getting up in the years, what he do? He goes and fights to rescue his nephew Lot. Okay? So it says in the Torah of only a handful of men, I would say surge troops, soldiers, but who was truly victorious in this battle with multiple kings within Canaan? It was the angel of the Lord. I mean, the angel of the Lord fought for Abraham through victory over these kings to the point where Abraham was successful in retrieving in safety Lot and his family, his young family, and the treasure that was taken from him, and restored that to him. Okay? So in other words, Abram was the lucky charm for Lot. Lot was not quite moral and righteous as Abraham, and I'm not sure if he really believed this unknown God that led them out. He was younger than his uncle Abram, but he went anyway because, again, I think I think there was an issue with Abram and Haran, the father of Lot, taking custody over Lot, and of course marrying Sarai as well. Okay? So in the fifth aliyah, Abraham rebuffed the king Sodom's wish to reward him with lots of war spoils. Okay? Because you remember, Abraham believed completely, 100%, without any doubt, everything that the unknown God, Elohim, spoke to him from the very beginning. You know, there was evidence there, like the successful prosecution of that war effort in Canaan. He rejected the treasures and everything. The king of Sodom and others. Thank you for rescuing me. Thank you for returning all of our people to these cities. There was a massive win for Abraham and his clan as far as recovering of treasure and spoils and probably cattle and things of that nature. And again, Abraham had this unique opportunity in enriching himself through God's hand, but not the hand of some heathen king. And more than likely, anything this heathen king would have given Abraham was probably considered unclean. Okay? And that was important too at this time. So continuing on with the fifth aliyah, Abraham chose to accept the reassurances he had in his night visions and Elohim spoke to him every single evening that he would be rewarded for his righteousness and faith. This is what you call blind faith through righteousness and righteous life and good deeds through action, folks. So Abraham still deals with the issues of being childless. He tried to have a child with Sarai from the day that they were wed, and it just did not happen. Okay. Sometimes you pray for miracles, even though you went to the doctor and said, "I'm sorry, but your wife is infertile." Okay, and there's nothing we can do about it. Maybe you can adopt. Well, they tried to have a family, everything they could, but it just did not work out. But God said, "I will give you a great nation. I will build a great nation through you, Abraham." So what happened is that Abraham said, "What is the point of the reward and wealth?" Abraham conceded. He cried in tears in his eyes. I have no heir to inherit it. I have no one to carry out my good name. I have no one to go out before in his unbelieving and evil lands to share the knowledge of the love of what you have done for me, Elohim, and pass it on to future generations. And God assured Abraham that he would indeed have a child, but in God's time, not Abraham's time of convenience. This is how, you see it, don't birth an Ishmael. Well, literally, this is what happened next. Not only would God build within Abraham a great nation, but his descendants would be numerous as the stars of the heaven. Now, before people debate what that means, I'm an amateur astronomer, and there's something called sixth magnitude, and you can only see so many stars with human eyes without telescopes or other things. So that is conceivable that the stars on a clear night, when God was speaking to him, or in a dream, when he saw the constellations, the zodiac and everything else, and planets, that's what he saw, and that was his sampling rate on what it meant in context that the stars you see tonight, your descendants would be just as numerous. Okay? So in the sixth aliyah, Abraham requested another sign from God that his descendants would inherit the land of Canaan. Here we're going again, establishing very clear in the book of Bereshit, the land was established through Abraham in the land of Canaan, which became Israel, which morphed into Syria Philistia, and then became Israel again in 1948, 75 years of independence of that sacred year. The land belongs to Abraham. It belongs to his progeny. It belongs to his son Isaac. It does not belong to Ishmael. And we're going to get into that in a minute. But God responded in a famous covenant between the parts. Now again, this is a very strange thing. Abraham was very tired. He was exasperated. Maybe it was a hot day. We told you about a famine in the land. And God had commanded him to cut up animals for a burnt offering. Okay? I believe this is the first time that I recall, since God started speaking to Abraham, that he commanded him to offer a burnt offering. I'm sure Abraham wanted to do something, and it was not unknown for other people, polytheistic people, to have burnt offerings to their gods. Okay? But this was very interesting. This is called the covenant between the parts. The parts are very Kabbalistic and symbolic. I'm not going to go into a lot of detail with that. The way the animals were cut up in a certain way meant how God's prophecy would be revealed and fulfilled in the life of Abraham. So Abraham, in the divine presence, passed between the assortment of half the animals, and God told Abraham that his descendants would be exiled and in bondage for 400 years. This is why Rashi, folks, says that the Jewish people in the land of Goshen as slaves 432, 33 years, because of that clock started ticking, because that prophecy was given. But anyway, the Jews were not in the land of Egypt that long, okay? But that's what that time scale has begun as far as cutting up the parts, the exiles and things of this nature. I'm not sure if Abraham understood the implications of all this, but, he did remember it, and he did pass it on to his children. So at the conclusion of this period, Abraham's descendants would leave and with great wrath, and this is future, the prophecy. God would punish the nations that enslaved them, so God would punish Egypt for enslaving the Jewish people, and, the story of Pesach and everything was very true. Following this pact, Sarai, seeing that she and Abraham were still childless, becomes birth to Ishmael, suggested Abraham's father a child with her Egyptian maid. This is not unusual to have a midwife, have a maidservant for I say a madame, someone like Sarai, like a queen, a princess or whatever, to help her with this, with childbirth. I mean, what do you do during this time? So she logically, and it was a tradition by her forefathers, that when a woman's infertile or too old to have children, then you give, when you're maidservant, to the man to father a child, because men can remain fertile much longer than women, okay? So that was her logical reasoning and rationale. It was a horrible mistake, okay? Bear with me. So Hagar eventually conceived a child, and she began to taunt Sarai. Now, Rashi likes to think of Hagar, an Egyptian-born polytheistic woman, as some righteous, beautiful person that Abraham later remarried when Sarai died. Well, here, why would someone that's righteous intentionally harm and hurt someone's reputation like Sarai and taunt her by nursing the child in front of her and everything else? Okay, but anyway, you hear about the evil eye of Sarai. This is where the story originates here, about don't brag on your pregnancy per se. Don't tell anyone in advance that you're pregnant, because someone else may be trying to have a child, but they had spontaneous abortion. They just can't have a child. You don't want to hurt people's feelings. You don't want to let them down, their self-esteem. It's not necessary to do that, but this is exactly what happened. I understand why Hagar, a young woman, a kingly man like Abraham, her having a child with him, have the implications of that. I understand why it made her haughty, but it doesn't make it right? So Hagar conceived a child, and the argument was so severe that she actually ordered Hagar out of the tent. Get out of here, woman. I don't want to see you again. Get out. And I guess she left Ishmael with Sarai. I mean, again, she was like a midwife. So Sarai couldn't nurse a child. Hagar did. So I don't know sure how that worked, but she may have just kicked her out, said, I'm keeping the child. I'm not sure. But Hagar, as soon as she went outside of the tents of Abraham and his people and his clan, an angel of the Lord, or maybe Gabriel, I'm not sure, talked to Hagar, said, listen, return to Sarai, I will help patch things up, okay? It's not time for you to leave yet, okay? So, this angel consoled with Hagar that don't worry, don't let your heart be troubled, I'm going to bless your child. Just like the commandments, the promises I gave in Abraham, I will make him a great nation. I will make a great nation out of your son as well. Okay? So she obeyed and gave birth to Ishmael. So she was heavily pregnant. She was taunting Sarai, who had a barren womb. And then she came back 9 months or more and gave birth to the child, okay? And at this time, at the end of the section, God added the letter Hey to Abram's name, making it Abraham. Because this is the first part of that prophecy that God would make Abraham a father of many nations with descendants as numerous as the stars in the heaven, okay? Wrapping this parsha up in the seventh Aliyah, God sealed a covenant with Abraham and his descendants. Sealed it. The sign of the covenant is the circumcision of all males when they were 8 days old. This is the Jewish tradition to this day. When you have a Brit, when you have a boy, 8 days is circumcised. But how would you like to get circumcised when you are 99 years of age? Okay, that would probably hurt a little bit, and probably take longer for wound care and all this, to recover. Anyway, not germane. But what happened is that all the men, like Eleazar and other people that was with Abraham, his general and soldiers, all the men there were circumcised, regardless of how old they were. And then Ishmael was circumcised at age 13. To this day in Islam, the tradition and practice is to wait until age 13 for their son to be circumcised, just like their forefather Ishmael, okay? So this is where this parashat ends. Circumcision is often misunderstood, and many people are against it. Some people are for it. Most medical doctors would admit that the benefits of circumcision for boys help minimize the risk of certain types of cancer. You can check it out yourself, but it's not just a Jewish tradition. It's a tradition in practice by many, I say Orthodox Christian families as well. It's something that you think about that original statement of truth that no other person in Canaan was circumcising their sons, especially a 99-year-old man, right? This is something was special. It's about cleanliness. It's about godliness. It's about removing that foreskin. That was something, that's why God built men the way he has for the circumcision, to renew that covenant every time that beautiful Brit ceremony is performed in synagogues around the world for young Jewish boys. Well, I hope you enjoyed this parsha. I hope it's memorable for you. I hope it's contextually relevant to your life today. That I learn something new every time I read this parsha. God's covenantal promises are true for you and me too. Abraham was a great Noahide, a great prophet in his time, a great chieftain that could have just rolled in wealth in a palace or whatever, like his father. But he didn't choose that. He chose the life of a nomad, as a migrant or traveler. He led a minimalistic life, but God blessed him. It reminds me of King Solomon. All King Solomon as a young man asked for was wisdom, and God gave him everything. Well, Abraham did not ask too much of God other than him saying, you promised me this. It's not happening. Did I understand what you promised? Please reiterate your promise to me again. Listen, it's all too human to question God's choices for our life, fate. Men hate fate. Most men hate destiny. They hate feeling that their life is out of their control. Well, Abraham gave up all his free will control to an unknown God that whispered in his ear at night in his sleep and called him out of the land of Chaldea and come into the land of Canaan to begin the process of forming the 12 tribes of Israel. I know everyone's mourning about what's happening in Israel. You feel powerless in a country like the United States or wherever you call home in the diaspora. But listen, God is allowing these things to happen. I think we're looking at the beginning days of Mashiach. I really believe that the armies that are gathering right now as I speak against Israel, that God is allowing the ignorance to continue and prevail. And it may seem that Israel is outmatched, militarily. And of course, the promises from the United States may be problematic as well. Of course, the UN is always against everything Jewish in Israel and the world, But, God is in control. And what God wants to teach the Jewish people, only through Am Yisrael Chai, truly being united, can God perform miraculous miracles in our lives. I truly believe that. So don't let your heart be troubled. Believe and trust only in Jehovah, your God. Asher Jehovah, Elahacham. It's the only worshiping words I use as this karate Jew signs out. Rabbi ben-Emmett here. Thank you so much for attending this video. Please share the knowledge and wealth of truth for everyone who's willing to hear it. Be that living witness, be that lighthouse on a hill, that beautiful shining city. Let other people know how much God loves them and wants to restore their souls. And we all say, Amen. Take care. And good Shabbos. Good Shabbos.